My name is Miriam Levine. I am 92 years old. And this is the story of how a Nazi commander turned me into a sex slave at the age of 15, and how, 35 years later, I found him hiding in Brazil and made sure he rotted in a Brazilian prison until he died. I hold up an old photo of a smiling teenager. This was me, 15 years old. A virgin. I dreamed of being a teacher. In 6 months, this girl was being sold to Nazi officers as merchandise. 4-5 marks at a time. I looked directly at the camera, my eyes cold as ice. Commander Otto Brandt raped me for the first time in March 1943. He raped me for the last time in January 1945. That's 638 days being used as a forced prostitute. I counted every day. And when the war ended, I swore one thing: he would never have peace. Never. And I kept my word. Heavy pause. It took me 35 years. But I found him. And what I did to him was worse than death. I was born in 1927 in Krakow, Poland. Middle-class Jewish family. My father was a tailor, my mother a seamstress. We were 4 siblings. I was the oldest. I loved to read, to study. I wanted to go to university, to be a literature teacher. I had a normal, happy life. I show family photos. This is my father, Abraham. This is my younger brother, Jacob. He was 8 years old. My sister Sarah, 12 years old. And Benjamin, the baby, 4 years old. All dead. All. I close my eyes, remembering. When the Germans invaded in 1939, I was 12 years old. At first it was just discrimination. We couldn't go to school. My father lost his shop. We had to wear the yellow star. But we were still a family. We still had dinner together. We still laughed sometimes. My voice grows darker. This lasted until 1942. When they created the Plazow forced labor camp, near Krakow. And they sent us there in March 1943. I had just turned 15 a week before. When we arrived in Plazow, they separated us immediately. Men to one side, women and children to the other. I saw my father being dragged away with my brother Jacob. I never saw them again. I found out later that they were killed a week later. Jacob for being too young to work, my father for trying to protect him. I was put in a tent with other women and girls. Some were 12, 13 years old. The oldest was about 40. All thin, dirty, terrified. An older woman pulled me aside and said, "Hide that you are beautiful. Dirty your face. Cut your hair. If the officers notice you, you are lost." But it was too late. On the second day, during the morning call, the camp commander was inspecting the lines. Commander Otto Brandt, 38 years old, Austrian, a member of the SS since 1933. Tall, blonde, blue eyes, the perfect Aryan according to them. He stopped in front of me. He looked me up and down. He lifted my chin with his hand. He asked my age. I said 15. He smiled and said, "Perfect. Come with me." My mother screamed "No." A guard hit her with his rifle. She fell. Sarah and Benjamin cried. And I was dragged away. Brandt took me to his house. Yes, he had a house inside the camp. Comfortable. Warm. With real food on the table while prisoners were starving 100 meters away. He pushed me into a room. There was a bed, a wardrobe, a window with curtains. It seemed almost normal. And then he said, "Take off your clothes." I was trembling so much I couldn't move. He ripped off my clothes. I was a virgin. I had never even kissed a boy. My voice breaks. He raped me right there. I screamed. I cried. I begged. He put his hand over my mouth and said,
"Shut up, or I'll kill your mother now."
Then I stopped screaming,
and I let it happen.
When he finished, he calmly dressed. And then he said something that made me realize that this wasn't an isolated attack. It was the beginning. He said, "You're going to live here now. You'll serve me whenever I want. And you'll serve my officers too. If you obey, your family lives. If you resist, I'll kill your mother and your brothers in front of you. Do you understand?" I understood. I was 15 years old and had just become the sex slave of a Nazi commander. The first few days were the worst because I still had hope of escaping. Then I understood there was no escape.
My life became a routine of horror.
During the day, I was locked in my room. Brandt would go to work, supervising executions, torture, slave labor. He would come back for lunch. He used me. He would come back at night. He used me again. Sometimes he brought other officers. Gifts to reward subordinates, seal deals, entertain visitors. I was merchandise. I stopped crying after 2 weeks. I learned to mentally disconnect. When they touched me, I would go to another place in my head. I would think about my life before, about books I had read,
about anything but what was happening to my body.
But Brandt didn't like it when I was passive. He wanted a reaction. So he started torturing me. Cigarette burns. Punches. Once he broke 3 of my fingers because I didn't convincingly feign pleasure. He said, "You need to make them believe you like it. Otherwise, you're useless." After 3 months, Brandt realized he could make money off me. Other commanders and officers from neighboring camps visited Plasso regularly. Meetings, inspections, parties.
And he started lending me
5 marks an hour. That was my price. He charged other officers to use me. Sometimes it was 2, 3 a night. He wrote everything down in a book. Names, amounts, dates. Very organized.
Very German.
I saw the book once. He left it open on the table. I saw my name, Jew 2847, age 15, and a list of officers with amounts next to them. In 6 months, he had earned 2,430 marks selling me. I was literally a lucrative business. And then it got worse. He brought other girls. 3 in total. One was 13. Another 16. The third was 14. All Jewish. All virgins when they arrived. Brandt created a private brothel inside the camp. To boost the morale of the officers, he said. The 4 of us shared that room. At night, when we were alone, we cried together. We tended to each other's wounds. The 13-year-old girl, Rachel, became pregnant. Brandt made her have an abortion without anesthesia. She died of infection a week later.
She was 14 when she died.
The room had a window overlooking the camp courtyard. And every morning, during the appeal, I saw my mother and siblings in line. I pressed my face against the glass, trying to get them to see me. Sometimes my mother would look out the window.
Our eyes would meet for seconds.
Tears fall now. I saw my sister Sarah getting thinner every day. I saw my little brother Benjamin being beaten by a guard because he fell in line. I saw my mother age 20 years in 6 months. And I couldn't do anything, because if I tried to help, Brandt would kill them. One day my mother disappeared from the line. I asked a prisoner who was cleaning the house. She whispered, "She died. Typhus." I was numb. I didn't cry. I didn't feel anything.
Because if I let myself feel, I would fall apart.
3 weeks later, Benjamin disappeared. Young children were often discarded. Too young to work, they consumed resources. Gas or a shot to the back of the head.
Benjamin was 6 years old.
Sarah's life lasted until December 1944. I saw her being taken away with a group of women. I later learned that they sent her to Auschwitz gas chamber.
14 years old.
I was alone. All my family dead. And me. I was alive, being prostituted to the men who killed them. In January 1945, the Soviets were closing in. Officers panicked. They began burning documents, executing prisoners who could testify, preparing an escape. Brandt was terrified. He knew he would be tried for war crimes. So he meticulously planned his escape, hidden money, forged documents, an escape route. On the last night before fleeing, he used me one last time. And he said, "You think you'll testify against me? Nobody will believe a Jewish prostitute. And even if they do, they'll never find me. I'll disappear. And you'll live the rest of your pathetic life knowing I'm free somewhere."
He laughed and left.
The next day, January 20th, 1945, he escaped. He took another officer and 2 suitcases of money and valuables stolen from prisoners. He left the camp in chaos. Guards fleeing, prisoners dying. The Soviets arrived 3 days later. I was still locked in the room. I weighed 38 kilos. I was 17 years old. I had spent 638 days being repeatedly raped. But I was alive. And at that moment I made a promise. I will find him, no matter how long it takes.
I will find him and make him pay.
It took me months to recover physically. Emotionally, I never recovered.
But I turned my pain into fuel.
I started by gathering information. I spoke to other survivors, to Soviet soldiers, to anyone who had seen Brandt. I found out he fled south, probably Austria or Italy, then disappeared. I went to refugee camps. I met other survivors. Many wanted to forget and rebuild. I wanted revenge. I met a man from Mossad, the Israeli Secret Service, who hunted Nazis.
I showed him everything I knew about Brandt.
He was impressed. I had details, scars, tattoos, mannerisms, names of associates. I had observed everything for 638 days. He said, "You would be an excellent agent. Do you want to work with us?"
I said yes immediately.
I trained with them. I learned tracking, investigation, interrogation. I learned to use my looks. I was young, beautiful after I regained weight. Men underestimated me.
It was my weapon.
For 15 years I chased leads. Europe, South America, the Middle East. I helped capture other Nazis as well, 12 in total. But Brandt? Nothing. Frustration consumed me. 1978. 33 years after the war. I was 51 years old and beginning to lose hope.
And then I received an anonymous letter.
It was from a German woman living in São Paulo, Brazil. She said that her neighbor, an Austrian named Otto Becker, had Nazi documents hidden in his house. She was anti-Nazi and wanted to help. She sent a photo. It was him. Older, 73 years old. White hair, wrinkled. But it was him. The same cold blue eyes. The same scar on his eyebrow from a student duel he boasted about. It was Brandt. I took the first flight to São Paulo. I went alone. I didn't even notify Mossad. This was personal. I spent weeks observing. He lived in a German neighborhood. Beautiful house. Brazilian wife. She didn't know who he really was. Thought he was a retired businessman. 2 grown children. Comfortable life. While my family rotted in Plasso. I planned carefully. I could kill him. It would be easy. But death would be too quick. He deserved to suffer. He deserved to rot in prison. He deserved public humiliation. I researched Brazilian laws. Brazil had laws against war crimes. If I could prove who he was, he would be extradited or arrested here. I needed proof. Photos weren't enough. I needed fingerprints, testimony, a confession. I devised a plan. I approached him pretending to be a German journalist writing about Austrian immigrants in Brazil. He loved the attention. He invited me for an interview at his house. I went with a hidden recorder. We talked for hours. He told stories of the war, a sanitized version. I was just following orders. I didn't know about the exterminations.
The usual lies.
Then I dropped the bomb. I said, Commander Brandt, do you remember a 15-year-old Jewish girl in Plasso? Number 2847. His face went white. He stammered, I don't know what you're talking about. I said, I am her, Miriam Levine. You raped me 638 times. You sold me to other officers. You killed my family. And I took off my blouse. I showed him the cigarette burn scars he inflicted. He tried to attack me. But I was prepared. Pepper spray. He fell. And then they arrived. Brazilian Federal Police and Mossad agents. I had warned them and coordinated everything.
Brandt was arrested right there.
The trial was in 1980. Brazil decided to try him here before extraditing him to Germany. War crimes, human trafficking, rape. I testified for 6 hours. I recounted every detail. I showed scars. I brought the only other survivor from Brandt's brothel, Leah, the girl who was 16. She testified too. Brandt initially denied everything. He said I was crazy, that I was making it up. But I had proof. Mossad had found documents, including the book where he recorded his earnings from prostituting me. Names, dates, amounts, everything. When I showed the book in court, he broke down. He realized it was over. His Brazilian wife cried and left. His children disowned him.
His comfortable life was destroyed.
In my final statement, I looked at him, and he said, You told me that no one would believe a Jewish prostitute. You were wrong. You said you would never be found. You were wrong. You took my virginity, my family, my youth. But you didn't take my voice. And now the whole world knows what kind of monster you are. Verdict: guilty. 25 years in prison in Brazil, then extradition for further trial in Germany. He was sent to a maximum security prison in São Paulo. And you know what I did? I requested visitation rights. As a victim recognized by the court, I had that right. I visited him once a year. For 10 years. Not to talk. Just for him to see me. To remember that I survived. I found him. I destroyed him. And him. He was rotting in a 3 by 3 meter cell. On the first visit, he cried. He begged forgiveness. He said he was young, that he was following orders, that he wasn't himself. I didn't say anything. I just looked. And left. On the second visit, he was angry. He yelled that I ruined his life, that he had a family, that he was old. I smiled. And left. On the fifth visit, he was broken. Completely white hair, thin, sick. He looked 100 years old. He didn't say anything. I just said, Remember when you said I would never have peace? You were right. I never had peace. But neither did you.
And that's enough for me.
He died in 1990. Cancer. 85 years old. Alone in a prison cell. Family didn't go to the funeral. Nobody went. He was buried in a mass grave under a false name because even in death he was a coward. When I found out he died, I cried. Not from sadness. From relief. It's over. 45 years after Plasso, it's finally over. I'm 92 years old now. I survived the man who tried to destroy me. I survived the war. I survived 638 days of hell. I never married. I never had children. I couldn't trust men. I couldn't be touched without remembering. Therapy helped, but the scars are too deep. But I had purpose. I dedicated my life to ensuring that 13 Nazis, including Brandt, paid. I gave lectures in schools about the Holocaust. I helped other victims of sexual abuse find their voice. And now I tell my story one last time. Because girls need to know, you can be broken. You can be abused. You can feel like you've lost everything. But if you survive, if you hold on to that spark of righteous anger, you can turn it into power. You can make your abusers pay. I look at the camera with final intensity. Otto Brandt raped me for the first time when I was 15, but I met him when he was 73, and I made the last 10 years of his life a living hell. He died alone, hated, forgotten. And me. I'm still here, telling my story, making sure the world knows. Pause. I won. Survivors always win in the end. Because our memory is stronger than their forgetfulness. Never forget. Fade to black. Text: Miriam Levine passed away in 2019 at the age of 92. Her testimony helped convict 13 war criminals. This was her last recorded interview. May her memory be a blessing.